Ms. Devenish?
Here.
Mr. Ganzer?
Here.
Mr. Stein?
Here.
Mr. Hamburg?
Here.
Mr. Kugel is excused.
We've got approval of minutes from January 12th. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Edits? Corrections, deletions? Mr. Hamburg?
On page 1, under the appearances, Randy Smith, the third line, he talked about the Restore dumpsters, very large, not been well maintained. It says since the Restore moved in, I believe he said that in the past. I don't think he was alluding to what they were doing. He was just worried that it would continue. So I think it'd be better to say it had been poorly maintained in the past, and all the neighbors had come and talked about that before. And then he went on with what you have about meeting with them and making sure it doesn't happen in the future.
Any other corrections? Edits? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays are carried. Move on to appearances. Is there anyone here who wishes to appear on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to 5A. Unfinished business, public hearing on request by Steve Doran, SWD acquisitions for approval of a zoning permit, site plans, and building elevations for the development of a 5,000 square foot restaurant, retail building on a portion of the property on Broadway.
Good evening. Everybody see that okay? I thought it would be best if I just went through and highlighted the things we changed on the plan per the requests the last time I was here. I think what I'll do is start with some trees that were asked to be saved. The first set is right here along this bile retention pond. We were able to, I think, per Chris's comments, we pushed this pond into more of the corner versus having it be more of a swell in this area. And as a result of that, we were able to save 2 more trees here, which, according to the tree expert I hired, are 2 good trees, so it was a good score. The other 2 that we saved were right here, and we accommodated that by moving the trash from right here to this area, so we have more land area that won't be disturbed, and we'll have a better chance of saving those trees, or we will be saving those trees. So that, I think, is the first thing I wanted to point out. The other thing we did, now we're talking about landscaping, is there's some concern about the lights from the cars coming through this drive-through spring in this direction. So we really took a look at this area and loaded it up with low shrubs that would provide some more cover. We continued that along the building into this area where these parking stalls are as well. Third thing that I had on my list was the pedestrian connection to the hotel. Yeah, we looked at this several different ways and ultimately decided the best way to make that connection was to come around the front of the building in between some existing handicap stalls that exist at the current American Inn Hotel. We looked at it here, but just couldn't get, with our engineer, couldn't get the grades to work out right, and we looked at relocating some of these handicap stalls to make that work, but a ramp over here wouldn't accommodate that, so ultimately decided this was the best place for that. And then the fourth comment was, we talked last time about the pitch of the roof, and the last pitch that we presented was showing this building is really pretty tall and out of place. So we went back and looked at a 6/12 pitch for the roof and feel that it just fits in, seems more in place than what we had previously proposed. So those are the 4 changes I had on my list. Brad also brought some samples of building materials to show everybody what actual materials we're looking at using, so I'll let him show those as well.
Yeah, so just kind of as a recap, it's a cultured stone that will be applied, to the building itself. This is a little bit, we changed up the color a little bit to more of a beige, beige ranges and tans. And then I think we had a little bit more of a grayer sample of cement board siding. So we kind of even that out a little bit so that those work well together. And then I know there was a question of the trash enclosure, and we're proposing a split face block, just a little bit more durable material for those. And so we were looking at the wheat, most likely, in a split face, so that has the same color as the building would, but just and really the same kind of texture, but would be less susceptible to the damage and abuse that a trash enclosure goes through on a daily basis. So that would be at that near the entrance there. The one other thing I just wanted to mention, going through Darren Pope's comments on the site plan, was the drive, and kind of reached out to Darren and didn't hear back today, but wanted to just make a comment on the drive here. Right now, we're currently showing a 20-foot drive aisle. I think the ordinance for Monona is a standard 24-foot. We've narrowed without adjacent parking or parking that backs up to that. In different municipalities, we've gone down to a 20-foot aisle, and we would, I guess, request or I don't know what the option or method of getting that possibly reduced to a 20-foot aisle in this certain case. But because we don't have cars backing out, we feel, and we've done this in the past, that going down to a 20-foot aisle is enough space to have 2 cars pass by each other with no other cars trying to back out or anything like that.
I'm sorry, where are you talking about?
It's this short piece of aisle right through here is just narrowed down to 20 feet. And the reason why we did that was just we could get another 2 stalls in to keep our parking counts up there. And by doing so, if we were to move to a 24-foot wide aisle there, either that tree island would have to be relocated, or we would potentially lose, I guess, 2 parking spaces. So that was kind of the intent of that 20-foot aisle. So I guess that's up for some discussion if the Plan Commission has any feeling about that or not. Other than that, I think all the conditions and all the comments that Darren had, we'll be able to achieve.
Is there anyone else that wishes to say anything during the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on to 5B, which is consideration of action on the request. And Sonia?
This is the 3rd public hearing and Plan Commission review of this proposal. Just reviewing some of the changes in architecture. The pitch was revised, and the 912 pitch was included in your plans as well, but the 612 is the proposed pitch. The east elevation was also revised with some changes to the location and amount of masonry as requested by the Plan Commission. I also have a note just to make sure that the trash enclosure is acceptable for materials and screening. There's some landscaping along the south side of it. The patio detail was new in this plan set, so just wanted to point out that there's stamped concrete and wrought iron fence around both outdoor patio spaces and the cedar trellis. And also talked with Brad about the planters that are shown on the patio space on the west side of the building. There's some raised planter beds that kind of add an architectural element, but in our discussions it's really more of a conceptual idea and not intended to be included in the final construction. It wasn't included in the detail sheet. So just pointing that out. The 4 additional trees were saved by relocating and reshaping the stormwater features. A CSM has been submitted and will be required to divide the lot. but it will go to Public Works first as required in the code. So we'll do that and then come back to Plan Commission and then council approval on the CSM. And then engineering review is completed by Darren Pope, so he'll give a review of his report that was included. And then just going through the recommended conditions of approval, there are 15. A lot of them are kind of standard with building permits, alcohol licenses, and patio permits for the outdoor spaces. On number 3, regarding the fire code, the fire chief's comments were that the building would need to be sprinklered, and that was when it was over 8,000 square feet in size. Now the building's down to 5,000 square feet in size, and was able to confirm with the assistant fire chief that a sprinkler would not be required. And they're also proposing the 2-hour rated firewall and separate hoods in each restaurant. If the sprinkler was required, then we'd need to talk about the water service size going into the building. And then any work in the right-of-way permits, CSM, some conditions regarding stormwater, shared parking agreement should be provided, and a shared easement for the driveway on West Broadway should be documented and recorded at Dane County, and recommending a tree protection plan for during construction.
Thank you. Darren, did you want to?
Try to just briefly go over some of the more major comments that I thought that the Plan Commission maybe should be aware of and maybe have some discussion on. In terms of site layout and grading, the minimum parking space dimensions in Appendix A of the ordinance calls for a 9-foot width and an 18-foot long stall. And there are spaces on the proposed plan that have a length of 16 feet, and those occur these stalls along here, and the stalls along here, and then the stalls on in this lot along this edge here. So I guess our recommendation would be that those be either lengthened to 18 feet to comply with the ordinance requirements, or notice that in the front part of the stalls, they are landscaped areas. There's no walls or other features that would prohibit a 2-foot hangover over the parking stall that would then allow a total 18-foot length. So if that might be an option that you'd want to consider, allowing that if they have their landscaping moved back far enough that it would allow a 2-foot hangover, then they could effectively obtain the 18-foot length for the stall. Brad had brought up the other point was the driveway aisle next to the building. Per the appendix design standards in the appendix of the ordinance, 24-foot width is the minimum dimension. I guess to take a look at the request, this building doesn't require it, but the standards for a fire lane, a minimum width is 20 feet. So they're not proposing anything less than that next to the building there. So you might want to consider that when you're discussing reducing that requirement potentially. The plans show the adequate amount of ADA required accessible parking spaces. They do have a storm sewer inlet placed in one of the proposed accessible parking spaces. I recommend that they maybe move that out of there. We're always kind of fighting between keeping the minimum 2% slope and then slopes that are adequate to get the drainage to that inlet structure. So if possible, we'd recommend that they shift that out of the ADA parking stall in the access aisle. And utilities, I guess the water service was mentioned. If they don't have to sprinkler the building, then the 2-inch service size probably would be acceptable. If they need to go to the sprinkler system, then a 6 or 8 would probably be what would be needed there. So defer that to their plumbing designer. The erosion control plan that they're proposing seems to be adequate, just recommending a little bit more silt fence extended along the east side for when they construct that bioretention basin. Stormwater, this is not your typical site, I guess I'd say, because you have an existing building there that was completed in 2000, and there was a stormwater management plan for that site that met the requirements at the time. They're subdividing out the parcel, so per the city's recently updated ordinances, that would be considered new development. And for sediment control, you'd need to have 80% reduction on the newly constructed, the parking lots in the newly constructed area. The applicant's engineer, well, I guess to back up a little bit, the drainage pattern, then also you're getting some of the stormwater coming from the existing site flowing onto the proposed site and then into the bioretention basins. So the applicant's engineer, kind of the methodology used to analyze that, looked on the east side that you're having some stormwater flow from the American Inn site coming through the new site and into the bioretention basin. And the drainage areas worked out enough that the existing impervious area that was coming off of the American Inn site into the bioretention basin that's on the east side was an equivalent area to what's being proposed on the new lot on the west side. So in effect, that bioretention basin is achieving the 80% sediment reduction for the newly proposed impervious area. One thing that I am asking them to provide, though, is the analysis of the bioretention basin on the west side. They didn't analyze that to show how that performed. So I'd like to see how that performs before recommending complete approval of it. Oil and grease, the way that they have the bioretention basins designed with 36 inches of engineered soil provides an acceptable means for oil and grease control. We do, in the bioretention basins, the DNR technical standard does recommend pretreatment, meaning that you try to remove some of the oil and grease and sediment before it gets to the bioretention basin to help with reducing the amount of maintenance that's needed. For that, we'd recommend maybe that they put in some inlet oil and grease filters in order to get some pretreatment before the bioretention basins. Rate control, they need to, for the existing area, they need to maintain the 2-year and the 10-year storm, and they're doing that. For the new areas, they also need to maintain the 1-year storm, and that was lacking from the stormwater calcs. And I did talk with Roxanne Johnson, their engineer, today, and she will be able to run that calc, and her feeling is that they'll be able to meet that requirement as well. Infiltration requirements are being met by the bioretention basins. And then we just have some recommendations for the bioretention basins to help them function a little bit better. An underdrain was not proposed for the bioretention basins, and per the DNR technical standard, those are required if you can get them to drain to an inlet. So Roxanne will be taking a look at that. And then we recommend emergency drawdown pipes, which in the first year of the plants being planted, it allows this amount of stormwater to be bypassed from the planting area so that the plants can be, they can establish the roots without getting washed out. And in the wintertime, you can also have that bypass pipe open so that the runoff that's heavy and salts that can be poisonous to the plants can be bypassed. And then in the spring, you put the cap back on it so that it then functions fully again. We found that helps with keeping the plants healthy in the bioretention area. And then the stormwater maintenance agreement, this comment isn't in my letter, but I think it's something that we just have to make sure that both property owners are party to the agreement, because these are shared stormwater treatment facilities. And then finally, vehicle circulation. The submittal didn't include a vehicle circulation diagram, and we didn't get an AutoCAD drawing to do it. So per my conversation with Roxanne, she'll be taking a look at that and either doing the analysis or providing us with an AutoCAD drawing to take a look at that. So, is there any questions on the comments that I might be able to answer?
You said a drain tile is required. I believe if they have drain down in
an
72
under-drain.
hours, you do not have to have a drain tile. So if they have enough infiltration there that it drains down completely 72 hours, a drain tile is not required. That's the DNR standard. In which case they put a monitoring well in and just make sure that
Right.
during maintenance that can happen. So I don't know, and I know Roxanne's not here tonight, but I don't know what their infiltration rates are. I know historically
It's-
that corner has, the
Yeah,
water's always gone away.
what I've seen is the DNR tech standard requires the under drain if you have an infiltration rate of 3.6 inches per hour. And for the soil borings that they had a ½ inch per hour.
Well, if they have a ½ inch, they'll need a drain tile.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The inlet filters, that's under considerations, I believe, and not criteria.
A recommendation.
So it's a
yeah.
recommendation, it's not a
Right.
requirement.
It's not a requirement.
So we can't require them to put in inlet
Correct.
filters. We can just suggest that they might want to look at putting in
Right.
inlet filters. I don't know how much grass they drain across. There's not a lot, but that's, kind of the way the DNR looks at pretreatment too. They just like to have something happen before it gets there.
Right. They have the storm sewer discharges right into the surface of the bioretention
Right.
basin without
Right.
going over any grass or anything. So
But
it's
if
a
we-
really compact site, so it's hard
Yeah.
to get that.
But if we require inlet filters, we're kind of double dipping on them. We're asking
Right.
for double protection.
Right, and that's, why I phrased it in my letter as a
It's a
recommendation.
recommendation, okay, so. And I think, when they're trading credits, I kind of like that because a parking lot that was getting no cleaning, at least is getting some cleaning now. So
Right.
I'm kind of a fan of that, and I know they've allowed the trading credit, so I'm glad we're allowing it on this one too.
Right, yeah, it's hard to separate the two sites
You
in
can't.
two with the
You
drainage
can't. So you
patterns.
just have to do
so-
analysis over the whole
Right.
thing, get the cleaning, and we're getting the TSS removal we'd like to get on a new site. It's just coming from old and new.
Mhm.
So I'm a big fan of that. That's all the questions I had for Darren.
Okay, any other questions for Darren? Okay, might just want to hang around in case something pops up. Thank you. Commission members, comments? Bill?
Regarding, can I go to aesthetics?
Yes.
Do you recall what the roof pitch is on the American? Did we establish that?
Yeah, on the American over at
Come up to the
this-
mic, please. Thanks, Brad.
Is that microphone thing?
Yes, the American has a 612 pitch. So we're
612,
matching.
so you're matching.
We're matching
Okay.
the American, correct.
It's great, and I think it's proportionately, it's a lot nicer. I like that as well. Are you, so those, you refer to the lighting over the signs as decorative, so you're still going to be requesting interior lit channel letters or something, backlit channel letters?
Most likely, the tenants that are there will require, an internally lit channel letter,
Okay.
at least in some portion. I mean, we don't have the signage package yet from them, but I would, typically they are.
I can't personally speak to those 16-foot parking stalls, but I think it requires more conversation from those of you that can speak to that. Other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Stromberg?
Couple things. First, again, thank you for responding to everything. You've done a really diligent job and a good job with taking most comments to heart and doing what you can on it. And I think staff had a fabulous staff report and very thorough tonight too. So it was really good. You didn't talk about your light pole fixtures. I was a little confused when I read it. Are you matching what American Inn has now?
We're trying to.
Because there's two different kinds listed, and honestly, the magnifying glass was so small I couldn't read which
Oh,
one
was
was
it?
where.
Okay.
So maybe you could just go over what you're putting where, because it looks
Sure.
like you're putting some other. They've got kind of the ones that match ours, except they're green on the site right now. It looks like you're putting some of those, but then you're putting some black shoebox style. Is that right?
No, they're all going to be with the shepherd's hook.
Okay.
The image that's probably in the our drawing set that shows a shoebox.
Yeah, like that image right there.
Yeah, it's just really calling out, the comment there is that the light fixture, bronze, it refers to the fixture
But they're
schedule.
not bronze, they're green right now. I
The
think.
existing ones are green. The new ones, we can't find the matching
Okay.
pole,
But it's
so
not- you're not
it would not be a
suggesting
box. They're all gonna be the shepherd hooks.
Because in your schedule, it shows two different types too, in your.
Right, there's a
bundle.
single and a double.
Well, there's also
shepherd
some other things. There's a couple of the holophane or whatever, and those I get, but what's the RAB lighting? I couldn't tell what that is.
The RAB lighting is the building,
That's the ones on the building?
the ones that are on the
Okay,
building, yes.
Right, great,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then if we can't find the green, I know the, Sonia had made a recommendation, we can't match that. Black is what's on Broadway. I don't know how you
Right,
feel
I mean, we
about
could
that.
go,
But if
could
we
go
have black
I don't
on
think it really
Broadway
matters.
and green on the site and then introduce bronze, it's like,
Sure.
I don't know. It's just something everybody else can talk about. It's just,
You bet.
I-
Yeah, we can do black.
it would seem like at least we're matching from Broadway in, and then American Inn did something different.
Well, American is actually switching over because they cannot find, there's no manufacturer stamp or anything on them,
Really?
those existing light poles.
I know.
And they're having a hard time because they want to switch over to LEDs as well. So eventually, what I see happening is that American will switch over to these light poles. So, yeah, I think we definitely could go black to match the street.
Okay.
And then as American transitions into their LEDs, they can replace to match.
Great. And, I love the fact that you're matching, or you're complementing the lighting on Broadway, and with the black, it'd look real good. I like the fact that you used some swamp white oaks, because that was originally oaks, and kind of as those older ones that, as we lose them, you'll have them growing up, it'll kind of keep that going there. I have a question on your bioretention. I'm not a big fan of what you did with bioretention number 2. You have the grading plan, because that's where it's really affected. You did all this work to save these trees, and now you're grading virtually right up to the trunk of that one, and that one. And I think that's just a death knell for them, based on everything else you've got going on there. You've got to remember that, that area is really elevated, so to get it down to where this can drain in there and handle it, there's quite a cut there. You've got a 1, 2, 3, maybe a 4-foot cut or better just to get to the bed, and then you go another 3-4 feet below that. So basically, there'd be no roots left all the way through here. And I think these two have been through so much. I don't know what your arborist said, but this one's really it's in tough shape. That one's got just a little bit dead wood. That one looks great, but I think by doing this right here, you're really taking away all the work you did to try to save those trees. And I was curious why you didn't try to put the biobasin in here, because it looks like it's coming from inlet somewhere right about in here. So instead of leading it that way, I was just wondering if you could have just let it down here. And this is a wide open area with no trees. If you could put the biobasin in there. And I don't know, Darren, are you aware, it's not showing up on my plan, does the storm sewer come all the way along Broadway here? I know there's an inlet in the driveway and one here. The road goes this way, but I think the storm sewer heads out the other way.
He can't see your pen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
There's an inlet here and an inlet here. I know this site drains in this inlet, but I'm just wondering if the storm sewer continues here, because if it did, it'd be an easy fix. Instead of running your pipe here and back, you could just run down into here with a bio bed and then right out to that storm sewer, and it would really be pretty simple. And you might even find better soils there. I noticed on the reports you found very poor soils here. I thought they did, you can't see it, but up in the bed up that way, they found a lot better soils, if I recall, on their test pits. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
if where the elevation at the bottom, I thought they were slipping a half inch per hour, both of them.
Okay. But I think this is really
I'll check with
tough
Roxanne.
on all of us.
I know Roxanne did look, we had a discussion about, putting it in that area. I think part of her issue was the grades, because we're up another 4 feet there and we're sloping back down.
At least you don't have all these trees you're cutting down.
Right.
In front of. You look at the bio bed when it's down on other plan sheets doesn't look that big, or then like it's really getting at those trees. But when
Yeah.
you look at your grading limits, it's right up to
She's
the
got it
trunks
right
of all
there.
3 of those, and you're taking all the surface feeders out in all those trees, and I think you're.
We
can
could-
seriously affect the
We
ability
can,
of those
we
trees.
can take a look at that and see.
And I know I'm preaching to the choir, this is your front door, and
Yeah.
and you
No,
want,
yeah,
you
no.
want it to go, so I'm preaching to the choir, but it's something that I noticed that I'm a little concerned about.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk to her about it.
And though I'm talking about trees, I'm just wondering if we slid that over one more. I don't know where it comes in the field, again, compared to the canopies. You like to stay out of those canopies as much as you can. And you're coming in with that dumpster a little bit. Is that going to have a frost wall or a floating slab?
Be a floating slab.
That's better.
Yeah,
I was a little
and we're
worried
trying
you
to
did
put,
frost
we're
wall.
trying to narrow that up as much as
Narrow that
possible.
as much as you can.
Yeah.
I would say keep it away from there, and maybe depending on where those trunks are, I think there's 2 trees there, you're getting really close to that one again then too, but
Maybe we can even angle that a little bit, so. I don't know
angle
if
it or
that'll
just pop out once, it's one stall.
help.
But I'd sure like to see if it'd be possible to come down here and just don't disturb that area at all.
Yeah, okay, we'll look at that.
And you could check with Bruce too and see what he found on those trees. I guess this one's pretty rough shape, that one's got some dieback, that one looks really good. But there's not much pervious area left for those poor trees.
Okay, I'll look at it.
Thank you. Let me get the landscape plan. This is the entryway again, it doesn't show up real well there. You've got a couple maples here, which is great, but then you continue the maples through here again with oak, 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 oak. I wonder if that'd be a great candidate instead of a maple, putting little swamp white oaks there. Because these are all mature trees, and again, that'll give you something growing up when some of these die back, you'll still have that kind of oak entrance that you've got right now.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
It would seem to make just a little bit of sense.
Yep.
Okay. I'm a little confused. We talked about these islands that either they would have to have something green in them, low, or lawn area. It says lawn here, but it also says SM or something that means stone mulch.
We just talked about that. It says lawn, but him and I just talked about it, and I would prefer to just bark that area.
We can park, but then you gotta get some low bushes
Yeah.
or something
Yeah,
green
some
towards the
low
thing. And
things,
it's your call, really.
Yeah.
It talks about lawn, but then it talks about stone mulch, and just so you're aware of
We
that.
won't have any stone, for sure.
Okay, whatever. Bark
Yeah.
mulch is fine, but
Yeah.
but if it's the bark mulch, you just have to have some low green in there, some along there, and that's something someone you can work with you on.
Okay.
But one or the other.
I was worried lawn would just not
Uh,
survive there.
You're probably right, with all the cars overhanging there and the salt dripping down on there, it's probably a good call. And, well, during the day when you're mowing and the cars are sitting there, it's hard to get in. As to this is the 20-foot aisle we're talking about right here. And the area we're talking about is this right in here where it's narrower. Can you tell me what kind of traffic you're gonna have in there? You'll be playing it really close to vest with who's gonna be in there, and I'm not telling you have to tell us who it is, but what kind of traffic will it generate?
As far as tenants, I'll tell you, I've got a signed lease with Qdoba for this end. Okay.
Mhm.
And I don't have a signed lease here. I'm really close with a sit-down, kind of, you probably can explain it better. It's a restaurant that has specialty micro beers
Okay.
on tap. So I don't. When you ask that, are you wondering what kind of
traffic
vehicles
what kind of
or
traffic will they generate? What kind of turnover?
I mean,
Is this the type of place where
think-
people will be coming and parking and getting their takeout and leaving,
No.
or will it be a place where
Not-
they're
not
coming
on
and
that
No, they'll
staying?
be staying.
Because my first impression is 20 foot is fine. I helped write the ordinance that has the 24, and we were mostly thinking about parking aisles in the cars. That's where it primarily goes in. But we also wanted it for these cross aisles, but that's in a much larger application. This is a fairly small amount of stalls in here, and I don't see a lot of traffic. Because the worst thing that will happen is if somebody, which they always do, makes a wide turn here, somebody else will have to wait till they get through. And that's as much an issue for you as someone else. Only would ever do is back up into here, but it's such a small lot, I just don't see that issue, and I see that a variance we could easily grant to have that little piece of drive aisle. I think it was a good catch, but I think in this situation, which is why Darren mentioned it, that it would be quite possible to let them go ahead and have a 20-foot drive aisle there. I don't see an issue.
Something during the discussion that I thought, could you make one-way traffic through there?
I don't think you'd want to. I don't think you'd want to limit them. I think it's pretty rare when you have that few number of stalls, and that's why I asked if it was a takeout, for people coming and going, but most of the takeout people would try to hit these stalls anyway. If somebody's coming and going, they're coming and going, what, every hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, no matter how long they sit there. It's just, think about the parking lots here, and there's just not that much traffic when it's something where it's going to be sit down. And I anticipated that this end would be more than that you might have people coming and going in carryouts because you have the drive-through.
Right.
So that would be the type of business, but these people, this would be their last resort to come way over here. So my opinion is the 20-foot would work just fine in this application for what they're showing. And then I guess the last thing, Darren did talk about it, the 16-foot stalls are fine, we allow them, as long as there's a 2-foot overhang, and that's in our ordinance. I think, again, it's a good catch. What we need to do is just make sure you back your landscaping up 2 feet,
Yeah.
so that we've got, and it's better for your landscaping anyhow, so that
Yep.
it doesn't get salt and stuff dripping on it all winter.
Yeah, in the color plan that we had brought, showed it pushed back at least 2
So-
feet in those locations.
So there'll just be a condition about the touch-ups on the landscape plan that you can go over with Sonia, but it would be things like pulling that back, deciding what you want to do in this island, how you want to handle that.
Yeah.
But I would say the 16 is perfectly fine, it works well, as
Okay.
long as we just have the room for them to have a little overhang so they don't stick out.
Sure.
And I believe that's all I have. I had a note about the protection for the trees, but there's already recommended condition. That just want to make sure, of course, your arborist talked about it very eloquently, a decent fence back enough so that they just stay off of them.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rob, any comment?
I had a question on the monument sign on A1.2. Is there, I see that the height of that sign is 5'8" initially. I don't know if that had to be 5 feet or if that was just on Monona Drive frontage.
It does have to be 5 feet maximum, but I put a condition in here as well that the monument sign detail is not approved at this meeting because it's not a request for a sign permit.
I think that's all I have at this moment.
That touches on the one thing of the elevations still show the 3 signs per business on the building. So I know that's not tonight's question, so I'll pass on, but I know it will fit with the architectural issue, so how that fits in for future meetings.
Thank you. Gil, anything else, or
No, sir.
Karen?
I don't think I have anything new to add. I, as well as others, like the new 612 roof. I think you did a nice job on that. I definitely would like the lights to all be the Shepherd's Crook style, and just to tag on Mr. Homburg's, I'm not bothered by the 20-foot drive aisle width. We've got islands on either side, so
Any color on
pretty safe and
the
so
on the
forth.
light poles? Any color you?
Actually, that was thanks for bringing that up. What are the mullions and so forth on the windows of the building?
They're gonna be dark browns.
Okay, that's why you were picking up the bronze, yeah. No, I prefer that they all be the light poles, and I'm assuming your fence and so forth are all black?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all, the wrought iron fence will be black.
I'd make that all just match the same.
Correct.
No, I think the new plan meets most of the all of the concerns that we had previously voiced on previous plans.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Mr. Homburg?
I guess I forgot to ask, is there anything else in staff's report, either Sonia's or Darren's, that you feel is inhibits what you're trying to do, or you just, you
I
can't?
think so.
Okay. It's everything we've talked about.
Yeah, I think
Good.
I think we're.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Mr. Homburg?
Move approval with conditions 1 through 15 as recommended by staff. Condition 16, that the final landscape plan is approved by staff, and condition 17, that the light poles and fixtures are black. And I don't think it's in one of yours, Sonia. I guess 18, that the 20-foot drive aisle is shown as acceptable.
Anything else?
No.
Is there a second?
Second,
Further discussion?
again, the reason I did the landscaping one is really this
Oh,
that
sure.
2-foot overhang and decide what you want to do in those islands. So when you can approve that, I did the light poles black, just so we have a record of what you're doing.
We'll take a look at that retention area here too. Would that
Yeah, I gotta put that in there.
be- I'm not trying to,
No, you're right.
I just,
You want to add some more conditions?
Yeah, I do.
I'm
We
just,
gotta talk
I know
about
you're
it.
gonna go skip it over it, but
You're right.
I'm gonna look at it,
You're right.
so I want to at
That's a
least,
bad area for it.
I'll look, can I look at it and have staff approval on it? And if we can't relocate it?
Okay, can I have a
Did you want to amend
amendment?
your,
Yeah, and put 19, the final location and configuration of bioretention 2 is approved by staff.
is the second okay with that?
Yes.
Friendly amendment? Okay.
And I say it that way because I assume if you just can't come up with anything and it just doesn't work,
Right.
it'll end up coming back here then. But if something works out well, then we're done with it.
Yeah.
If
We'll look
if one
at
of
it.
those, if one of those trees is
Bad,
bad,
right on the corner.
you might be better off just taking it out and.
This
and
tree
using
right
as
here,
much
that
of
was
that
the
as
thought I
you
had
can.
looking at
Yep.
today, is if you took it out, would you
Rather
be
than
able
lose
to
three.
tuck it in? And, oh, my hand doesn't do a good job, does it?
No.
And then one other thought I had, what we've actually done, we've built some, so this tree right here in the corner, it's, and ask Allison, it's not real good. And it's possible if you took that out, you could get it away from the root zones. And something we've done on other jobs too is, instead of cutting this all back where you have the trees as a small retaining wall, and then you're not tearing out all those roots. And it's not a real tall one, it's just to get a mowable slope, they're sloping that way back into the tree.
Okay, so we've got a motion, a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Good luck to you. Appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, 6A, public hearing on request by Parks Director Jacob Anderson for the construction of a new park shelter and site improvements at Schluter Park, 4511 Winnequa Road. Mr. Anderson, good evening.
I was trying to be sustainable tonight. Computer gets a little low on toner when I print stuff out for a plan commission.
You know, you're not supposed to do a subtle dig at the plan commission, we don't give approvals.
Thanks for having me. This is a really great project that we're proposing for improvements to Schluter Park. It's proposed for the 2015 capital budget. It includes stormwater improvements to the channel adjacent to the park, and we proposed for a new bathroom, restroom facility within the park, updated pedestrian paths, and some beach improvements. So what we're looking at tonight is the building. We'll just kind of go through on your packet, a little bit home. So this is basically what we have right now in the park. We've got a parking lot here. We've got pedestrian paths that link up to the gazebo and to the existing restroom right there. The path goes out, kind of fronts the beach, and then this path goes to our accessible fishing pier. What we're proposing on the site plan for the new site plan would be to put the building basically perpendicular to where the existing restroom is, and that's noted in the blue dotted line where the existing bathrooms are. The goal of the Park and Rec Board was to maintain the view from Winnequa Road to the lake as much as possible, and to keep the footprint of the new restroom as comparatively speaking to the old one as possible. The actual building itself is as close to an exact replica to the bathrooms at Oneida Park that were constructed this year. And then there's some additional widening of the path system, and we're bringing a new path right here from the parking lot, which comes right across the street to, there's a curb cut from the Monona Bait and Ice Cream Shop. That'll give access for both pedestrians and bicyclists who are using the Lake Monona bike loop. This portion right here is going to be kind of our bike repair area. And so a big part of this project is to make this park bicycle friendly and to attract people that are using the bike route to our facility. There'll be a bike rack here, a bike repair station in this same spot, a water bottle filling station, and bike rack parking with potential for a future expansion to maybe a B-cycle or something like that. The lake side of the building is kind of a patio seating area that we would have a second phase where we'd either have some permanent or portable benches and picnic tables for people to sit and enjoy the lake and the views. And then we do have a path extending to where the lagoon is with a fishing pier and observation pier. And then this area right here is where our beach is at Schluter Park. And there's an extension of the beach over here to gain more views of the lake. Okay. Just go through a few shots of the building. As you recall, that's a view looking from the lake, and so it's the same architectural detail that we have at Fireman's Park Shelter and Oneida Park Shelter, and the proposed lattice restroom structure with the two-toned of the CMU block, the cedar top rail on the detail, the windows, and then the column with the same lightings that we've used in previous projects. And then this would be the front of the building itself. So we have a men's restroom and women's restroom, and then in the middle there would be a changing room. So one of the things that came out of the Park and Recreation Board was to have an area for families that would want to change for swimming. So there's actually people that still swim at Schluter Park and the beach. And so that's a little bit new, and the utility room is right behind there on the other side of the building. We do have Diana Dorschner here, our architect tonight, from Dorschner Architects, so when we get to that point for questions, she can answer any architectural questions. I think that's about it, other than the landscaping. We've been through 2 rounds at the Facilities Committee meeting, a lot of discussion on how we're going to manage the water coming off the roof, and because we have some concrete paths, the site topography is very flat. It's been somewhat of a challenge to be able to get the water underneath the concrete slab, and what we're looking at is trench drains that go into a rain garden on either side. And so this is a planting plan of a rain garden mix that we're using at the Lattice Park Improvement Project.
Jake, what was the other, the LED lights? There was a recommendation to switch from the cool blue to the warmer, and also was there something to put over it so it doesn't turn into this? The LEDs can be pretty harsh.
Sure. So we're looking at using the same style of fixtures that we have. In your packet is actually a different style, so we'll, at the next meeting, we'll have the updated specs in the light. Using more of a neutral tone, and then there's a dimming option that we're looking at having that dims it to a certain percentage at a certain time of night, and then goes up to a full percentage, but it would have a dimming function to it. I think that's about all I have right now.
Anybody else wish to comment on during the public hearing portion? If you want to, if you come up, please, and
Let's just sit right there. I can't see in the drawing.
I'm sorry, we're being recorded. That's why we ask that if you could be so kind as to come up and so that they can hear us at home, because we record this. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm at 4529 Winnequa Road. This is a park I've been going to for 60 years. And I can see with the building being changed with the angle there, I know there are trees near there, about where that red dot is. So I was wondering what's going to happen with some of those oaks that are on that side of the building. That's about it, really.
Sure, I can address that
Because
for you.
I know the field, the trees in the field are cottonwood.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. We do have an oak tree right here, and so that is one that we will work with our arborist and have a tree preservationist during construction to maintain that tree. None of the other trees are scheduled for removal. There may be one pine tree that's right over here. There's a line of pine trees that go down that may have to be limbed up, and depending on what happens with the excavation for the building, there might be one pine tree removal. We have worked here on, like for instance, this path. It shows kind of going through that tree. That path will be narrowed at that point. This part of the park with the mature trees, especially the oaks, are of extreme value to us, and the city and Park and Recreation Board, and every effort will be made to save those trees and to protect them during construction.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sir, come on up. Thanks for coming tonight.
My name's Rob Clade. I live on 442 Outlook. It's the property that's across the canal from the park. And I don't have a copy of these plans. I was wondering, A, if I could get them. And I can't see on the thing, where is the canal and where is the...
This is the channel right.
So that's the
Zoom out a little bit.
the channel, and this...
Other way. Oh.
I guess I'm interested in what you planned for this. I thought you referred to it as a observation deck, which I'm not really thrilled about observation deck looking into my living room. So if you could maybe give me a little bit more idea about what you plan on that, and also what you plan for the I guess you call it the shoreline between the park and the channel.
Sure. The shoreline has gone through several different changes through discussions with the Park and Recreation Board and the mayor on how we can mechanically dredge the lagoon and open it up for access for the public for fishing. We do have a large amount of people that fish in this channel currently, and they go through kind of all different areas. It's a pretty steep shoreline as it currently sits. There's a drop of 4 to 5 feet, and so the goal was there was several large cottonwood trees that it was the desire of the mayor and Park and Recreation Board to save. And so what we did is flatten it out here as much as possible, bring it up to a stacked limestone. I guess I would call it a fishing pier as a way for people to fish. And then this shoreline stays relatively steep and would have a vegetated planting. So there's I think what right now is being spec'd is called it an EnviroLock. It's an armor lock where it basically builds kind of a wall with vegetative plantings up. So this whole side of the shoreline would be vegetated, fairly steep, come to this outcropping. There'd be a small retaining wall here, and it would slope down to a flat area.
And the outcropping there is where the rock pile is now?
No, the rock pile would be like right here at the corner, I think is what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
At the mouth of it.
And so that's significantly back from the lake.
Correct. The current path that, kind of see it right here in the dotted line, would be extending that current path that goes to where the bench is. This is the playground equipment, would go straight out.
So, so let me make a comment first about this this site here. I really think you need a fence there because the kids come running through that park, and they love the water. And if they take a tumble down 4 feet, going right into the water, no one's going to like that. So I think you need more of a protective barrier there than simple trees. Second part, is there any way to take this and move it further away from my living room window, so people aren't looking into my house.
And during this portion, the public hearing, it's not it's where you get to identify the concerns that you have and share them with the group. And then when we get into the next stage of this is a pre-hearing conference.
Okay.
And usually what commission members do are take notes of the concerns that you have, and then it's our turn to kind of grill.
Sure, okay.
The folks on how it works. So if there's any more concerns that you have that we can discuss and talk about.
Yeah, so those are my major concerns. The other concern is that this area here right now is not it's not a beach and it's not riprap. It's just dirt, and it's all of the dirt that's running off of there that fills up the channel. And when the channel gets filled up, it becomes all algae and stinky, and no one wants to fish there anyway. So whatever you plan on doing there, you need to make sure that you don't get any of the soil erosion back into the channel, and you need to protect the little kids who are running around that park from a 4-foot drop into the water. So that's the issues for that area. The issues for this observation deck is they're going back, sitting back that far, they're going to be observing more of me than they are of the lake, because most of the lake, I don't know if you know the orientation of this park, but most of the lake and the Capitol are out this way. Mm-hmm. And this way is facing toward, I guess, Old Brick Gardens and the Old Brick beach and the boat ramp there. So if you put this observation tower this way, they're really not going to be able to see much. If you want them to see something, you need to put it farther out here where the rocks are, and maybe something that, this is a little self-serving, I admit, but something that faces toward the Capitol, which is that way, if that's what you want them to see. That's where the major part of the lake is. Otherwise, they're just basically looking at my vegetable garden and what I'm watching on TV. So those are my major concerns. Saving those cottonwoods, you can get rid of them if you want, as far as I'm concerned. If the mayor likes them, that's probably not a fight I'm going to win. But those are my major concerns.
Thank you. And Sonia and Jake, for anybody that's watching, the plans are on the city website, right? Correct. They could go to tonight's meeting, and there's...
It's under view and then current development plans. It's just two
under
steps.
View?
So view is on the top header of the homepage in blue on the right. You click view and then down to current development plans.
Okay.
And to kind of repeat what the process, tonight's the public hearing, and then there's a pre-hearing conference where commission members get to give their feedback on what's presented, and then it would come back for approval at a later date.
Okay.
So there won't be any thumbs up, thumbs down tonight.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You bet.
I don't agree with him with that station where you have that. I noticed that the children do graduate right to the point. That's where they want to go. They want to get to that furthest point. And now you're asking them to come back into that area where you really don't want them to be. Mm-hmm. There's no fish in there. They're not going to get any fish out of there. They're going to get the fish, if they want to fish, out at the other end. And again, the view. If you want this to be a park where we have a view, that's where the view is. My other concern was, where's the lighting in these parking lots? Since you have the bike lot, there's going to be people dawn, dusk coming and they bike at night. So in that service area, what type of lighting is going to be used for safety? Mm-hmm. And then on the back side, when people are at the water coming in to use the facility, what type of lighting? Is it just going to be a lighting on the building? Or is there going to be some type of shore light for the people who come and use the pier to come in and out? Because they're going to go to the bait station at night also. And then what is that aggregate up by the parking lot? I'm sorry.
Well, this,
Correct.
that's a trekking pad used during construction.
Oh, I got you. I know what that is. Okay. Okay. That was, I guess, lighting is my concern, and the trees, to save what trees are there, and are any new trees going to be proposed in that field area, or is that going to be left open for Frisbee and so forth?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, last shot. Move on.
Is there any, this is going to sound like an odd request, but is there any possible signs to put places, or a place to put a sign that says "Don't feed the ducks"?
Okay.
It's a, I mean, you laugh, but it's a very significant problem. The, the kids go across and get their ice cream, and they eat the ice cream, and then the ice cream cone they feed to the ducks, right? And then the ducks become, they leave behind the recycled ice cream cones, and they also become sometimes somewhat aggressive. And they expect that any kid who has an ice cream cone, or any kid who is there, is going to feed them, and so they're a little aggressive sometimes. So if there's a possible way to do that, I think it would benefit everyone. Thank you.
Again, anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing section and move on to pre-hearing conference. Sonia, you want to kick
It's
us
already
off?
been stated, but this is the first hearing by the Plan Commission, and no action will be taken tonight. And just listed some points that the Plan Commission can discuss: overall site design, layout, architectural design of the shelter, landscaping, lighting, and the concerns during the public hearing.
Thank you. Commission members? I guess, Jake, on the, what was the thought process in placing the fishing area where it's at? It's hard to see because we don't have the layout of the home on that drawing, but if you pull it up, I can see where it does look like it's going to be right looking at somebody's window.
Originally, there was two platforms spec'd, one closer to the entrance of the channel, right over in here, and then one right from here, closer down here. The desire from the Park and Rec Board was to expand this beach area right in here as much as possible to gain better views of the lake and also to get a bigger beach. There is some potential grade challenges, I think, as we head down to the beach from where we're at with this existing pathway. But I think there was a recognition of the amount of fishing that takes place currently at the park and the desire to have a designated spot for people to fish from and not just kind of all willy-nilly. So I think there was a desire from the Park and Rec Board to open up that channel for public use, and that area was selected as kind of a spot off the existing pedestrian path that's there currently.
Okay. Mr. Amberg?
I'd just add to that a little bit. This is the first time most of us have seen these plans, well, Thursday when we got our packet. I did meet with the mayor there this summer because he was looking for some advice on how can we get in here, what can we do to be able to build this and save these trees. So I just went over and looked at it with him. And I know when we looked at it, that fence along this upper side is completely, well, not complete, a bunch of areas where it's tracked down where the fishermen are trying to get in there so they can fish this thing. Now, I agree it's not really good fishing right now, but we just dredged the one off of Winnequa down on the other end, and if you look at the contours, this is like a 5-foot cut here. And once this is dredged out, it'll be excellent fishing in there, because when it was dredged down on Winnequa down by where I live, I mean, the fishermen came back by scores, and I guess they were getting a lot of hits. So My understanding is the intent was to have somewhere safe for the fishermen. They don't want the fishermen going up and down these banks, and they wanted to build something. If they built it out here, they'd miss the deep, good fishing. And then the other intent, the way I understood it, again, I don't know what Parks Board is thinking, but they want somewhere where canoers, kayakers can get down close to the water, have a stable platform, and launch their canoe or kayak. I think if it was called an observation deck or something like that, I don't think that's their intent. I don't think the intent is people are going to come here to look at the lake. The intent, the way I understand, is they're going to come here to launch a canoe or a kayak, or a safe place for the fishermen to get down here so they can come in and fish that end of it. So I think if you moved it down here, you'd do two things. You'd get away from the fishing, and I think you'd also get a little, right at the entrance, it might get a little rough water, it might not. I know the way I understood it this summer was they wanted to keep it off there a little bit so they had a calm, nice area to launch and head out there. If I'm interpreting that right, Jake, I don't mean to speak for you.
Yeah, I would say it's predominantly for fishing.
That was what I was told.
The
but that was
canoe
the
and
summer.
kayak, we can launch right from
Okay.
the beach area there, but predominantly for fishing and having more of a designated spot. And that's why originally we had kind of one over here too, realizing that is typically where I see most of the people fishing from, but they also in here. It's,
Yeah, we're going to have to, it's not a open conversation, so if you do have some, if anybody has some questions, this is, they can follow up with Jake and the Parks folks, but we should go back to the commission and their comments and concerns.
Just an observation, it's about 45 feet, 48 feet, high water or normal water where that's at. So I'd say from here to here, it's about somewhere between 40 and 50 feet. It gets to about 50 feet up in here is the widest part. I do agree with the speaker. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. This is a steep bank. How are we going to keep people from rolling down that bank?
I mean,
I know we can't keep them from.
The chain link is coming out?
yes.
It's coming
Yeah.
out. And my understanding is it's not going back
We
in.
don't have a fence proposed to go back in, no. I would say we have a whole lagoon at Winnequa Park that has no fence around it either.
But I think what I heard you say, Mr. Homburg, is that the idea of putting this facility in was to have it so that people could fish from there and keep them from getting behind the fence like they're doing now.
That was my understanding this summer. I have no doubt you've had many, many, many conversations about this since then. I have not been privy to any of those. This was one meeting I had this summer, and I know at that point they wanted somewhere safe for people. They know they're doing it, so I think at that point they wanted somewhere they could safely do it, and you can't keep people from running down, but it's pretty steep there.
Okay. Did you have your hand up first, or?
I was just going to ask, what are the dimensions of that platform?
It's 10 by 20, so 20 feet by 10 feet.
Anything else? Yeah. Brian?
I can clearly speak to the fishing in that area because I'm one that fishes right above the storm outlet on the far south side of that area, and there's great fish in there right now. One of the biggest bass I caught is out of there. I'm concerned that the location of that platform, you'll attract a few people to fish off it, but we're going to end up with the same problem we got right now, where people are going to go where that storm outlet is on the far south side, and the erosion issue of people trying to make a spot on the bank to stand while they fish and not drop everything in will happen again. So the concerns I have is the placement of this, although I understand that it was trying to push it closer to the lake and also give some access to that. I'm concerned that we don't have something to promote it on the other end. I appreciate the concern if you live on the other side of that, of inviting people to a location to observe might be one thing. People are already down there and are looking across the channel right now. I think the people that would be attracting to these locations are the people that are already there.
So this is where
The storm outlet is on the far south side of the inlet.
There's two, there's one here, and then there's another one that comes in here.
Correct.
So there's the big pipe, the real big pipe comes in down through here, and then you can see on your plan, there's a couple coming in here too.
That's my biggest concern, so that whole edge, and I know some of the earlier conversations were the whole length of that, of how to kind of have a mixture of addressing the safety of it with what people are using it for, and it doesn't matter what fence you put there. We walk around it, we climb over it. We don't want that to happen. We want to have a safe place for this to happen. So.
Other comments on the side of the building, Mr. Humbert?
Well, staying on this subject here, is there any flexibility if, for example, this was slid 20 feet one way or another, that would not be dead on to somebody's window or something? Is there any room to move it? I know there's trees here and things, but I mean, if we figure out where all the homes are, is there any flexibility to slide it one way or another to keep it out of somebody's picture window?
Yeah, I think, we'd want to have the engineer take a look at it.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, I think there would be, we got the 3 cottonwoods right in here that were of the ones that wanted to be saved. The rest of the trees along the shoreline will be removed. So I think there's probably enough room to bring that back if that's the wish. We do have to make it ADA accessible, so we either have to keep it, within this path system, adding probably a little bit of cost onto the overall project, or bringing it up here, just having one outlet.
Or maybe none. I mean, I'm not saying,
Sure.
I'm just saying if we go out there and just, it might be as simple as looking and say, yeah, we could slide this
Sure.
10 or 15 feet one way or another. It wouldn't be as obtrusive to a neighbor, and do that with very little, no cost.
Sure.
As far as a secondary access, that's going to add cost. You should talk to someone on council about that.
I'll bring a rubber mat to stand on.
The Envirolock system you're talking about, I've used. Now, the Envirolock system is really logs that have a growing medium in them, and then some seeds, usually a really low seed cover, like a grass or something. Is there anything other than that, or are you just going to have these Envirolock logs? Because I can see people coming up and down are going to wear those out, and you'll
Sure.
start having erosion too.
I can include the detail. I think it's the actual, it's like a fence on, I don't want to call it a
Not
fence,
really.
but
They're like,
but it's different than the logs.
yeah, but
And-
they stack.
Right, yep, they stack up as they
Envirolock,
go.
and
it
they're
would be
filled
a-
with like either compost and mulch, and
Sure.
maybe mixed with a growing medium, and sometimes the seeds are right in there, but it's basically like a super silt sock that's filled up,
Sure.
and the stuff starts growing out of it.
Sure.
Now, that's not going to stop somebody from walking over there. Somebody can still walk right down that. You can wear that out eventually if they are going to do it. It'll give you nice stepping stones, because it's more of a Lincoln log type of
Correct.
thing coming out, but it's still, it's going to be attractive. So I guess if it's going to be attractive, is it possible, if we have that step system, that somewhere along the line you just step it with stone or something just for one area and try to, with planting, keep them directed into there? I don't know. I'm not a fisherman, but the people that do that might want to think about it. Maybe Parks Board could talk about it a little bit. I know where it's the deepest. From what I've seen, that's where they're going to catch the fish. And it will be much better fishing there once that's dredged. So it's just, I agree with keeping in mind what's going to happen to that bank. Because we can see now with a fence, it gets walked down. So without a fence, it will clearly get walked down. So if we can just make one area easy, usually they'll do the easy thing and stay out of the tough one.
So what is the feedback? Are we saying instead of 2 to relocate this to a spot where it could access the deepest fishing?
I don't think I know enough about it to give a recommendation like that. Maybe the fishermen, maybe the Parks Board, but maybe just to give it a little bit more thought. As far as the one we're talking about, my recommendation is if it's going to stay here and we can slide it up or down a little bit to accommodate the neighbors, why not slide it up or down a little bit? It's probably going to be there. but it might not be dead on to wherever your back window was or something. You know, it could be helped a little bit like that. And that, as far as is there a need for another spot up here, talk to the people that fish it.
Got a comment?
Yeah, I just had more of a clarification. I had a misunderstanding of the concept of this thing. Now this, from what I understood when this planning started for this fishing pier, is that it was an accessible pier for ADA accessible pier to accommodate that population, but people would still fish up and down the channel.
Correct.
So it is not the only area to fish, but it's an accessible location to fish from. That's my understanding.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
So given that, I think it's, the whole length then is how do we ensure the safety of people using the length without busting it up and causing more erosion in that area? And if there's more ideal locations to have that, it'd be better to not necessarily build a platform, but make it most ideal in certain locations over others.
Through landscaping or lack of?
Well, if there was a bigger step and a bigger kind of platform area that might have stone mulch to stand in, that would be more desirable to stand on than a very narrow spot. I don't know if it's specific enough.
So you're not trying to discourage fishing up and down that channel?
No. I mean, I think the reality is people are going to do what they want to do no matter what we do. Fishermen have routinely shown that in our park system and where we have water, that they will just go wherever they please and step over whatever they have to do it. And so we can do whatever you guys want to do, but the fishermen are going to do whatever they want to do, and where they can grab the fish.
What I'm hearing, I think, is for this handicap accessible spot, if we can identify sight lines and accommodate the neighbors, that would be good. Any other site issues? Should we go on to building, or are we done with site issues?
I got a
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
comment on just the path layout, and I don't really have a problem with the general layout, but it seems to be a lot of impervious surface through there, and there's kind of that hump coming off the main as you approach the building, and
Sure.
there's kind of this wide radius as you go towards the fishing pier, and I just feel like some of this hard surface could be cut out of this plan. You could still have the same good circulation, but maybe you could expand that landscaping area and for more rain garden area. That would be.
Yeah, there's the patio seating area here was a desired element by the Parks and Recreation Board for views of the lake. This rounded area, the goal was to, knowing that our bike repair station's going to be right here, our bike rack's right going to be there, it'll be more of a gentle turnaround to be able to park bikes. And I think there's an assumption that there'll be just as much bike traffic through these trails as pedestrian walking traffic. But yeah, this landscape area, we were looking, as far as the rain feature, but certainly, we've got other areas that we can landscape in the park. I would say there's a fair amount of grass surface and sand that will collect the water from the sidewalks, so I don't think it's going to be running off into the pond or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fine. I guess just maybe finessing some of those curves a little bit better so it flows a little better. But I think the overall layout's fine.
And comments on the building? Robert?
First, I love the fact that you've kept consistency in our architecture and in the pavilions throughout the parks. I think that just gives us an identity for Monona. I love that. I love that it's similar to all other ones. If you're thinking about B-cycle, there's a lot of trees here, so I doubt they could put a solar one in, so you're probably going to, during your project, get a conduit under those paths for B-cycle. It's pretty simple, but they need, 110 is all they need.
in the plans.
Okay, didn't know that, I missed it. They asked about lighting a little bit. Could you just go over the plans?
Sure.
Where the lighting is? Is there lighting towards the beaches? I know there's lighting back towards the parking lot.
We had, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lights on the building originally, so this would be one that would be going out to the lake. There would be another one on the column facing the parking lot. There's no plans in this project to do anything with the parking lot as far as lighting of the parking lot. I believe there's a street light that illuminates a good portion of the parking lot.
You're not doing anything to the parking lot, are you?
Correct. Well, there will be probably some restoration from all the construction work. I think just a simple mill and overlay of the areas that would be damaged. During our facilities committee meeting, it was recommended and I think approved that we would remove 2 of the lights on the bathroom side and just have 2 instead of 4 lights. Lights basically 1, 2, 3, 4 as you enter the bathrooms. Facility committee recommended that we just have 2 lights there and there, but there would be a light up there on the column facing the parking lot, a light there, and then 2 lights on the back side.
So there's fairly good security lighting around and everything.
Yeah, there's...
Question on your dimming. I know a lot of the C-stores and service stations we do, their dimming function as just a like a motion sensor on it. It dims way down, and then there's people around, it lights up, and there's nobody around, it dims back down. That's, instead of the timer dimmer, that might be a feature you want to look at, and then possibly have it a timer after a certain hour where you don't want it to get bright. But it's a nice feature. You don't really waste a lot of lighting until someone's actually around, and then they stay active for a certain amount of time.
And I think that's what we're looking at, and I would defer to Diana on that one, but absolutely, occupancy sensor dimmer.
There's another question on any new trees. Certainly with the amount of trees you have there, Plan Commission's not going to require any more trees. I don't know if you're planning on planting anything, but it's a pretty heavily forested area for a park.
Sure. There's a few arborvitae on the lagoon side that I think the Public Works Department was proposed planting. From the Park and Rec Board standpoint, the saving of the cottonwood trees and not eliminating any of the oak trees was a huge part of the project, but as equally as strong was an opinion to have a clear view of the lake from the parking lot, and so that open area would stay as open as possible.
And then the last thing, that I don't know that really pertains to this, other than it was brought up here, does the Parks Board have any policy with any signage for feeding ducks or geese or anything else? I suspect that'd be a park board policy. It would have to be
we could certainly
consistent
do
throughout the parks.
Signage. I would have to review our ordinance. I know feeding of geese is prohibited in parks. I don't know if it mentions ducks.
Okay.
So it would be a park, it'd be an ordinance review and go from there.
All right. Thank you.
Any other comments? None? Seeing none, going once, going twice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
But hang around because we're going to move on to 6C.
I have one more thing.
Yes,
anyhow.
sir.
I always have one more thing. I think it's outstanding that you're going to be doing some work in this park. This is a great park. It's right on the bike path. I love the fact that you're fixing up and really going towards those bicyclists, because I think this will just be a magnet for people, and they'll start coming. They'll enjoy Monona. They might use something at the bait shop. I think it's a great spot for it on the bike path. So, kudos.
Yes, I'm looking forward
Awesome
to
upgrade.
less
It really is.
phone calls and emails about the condition of the current restroom.
Okay, we'll move on to 6C, which is review and looking for approval of the 2014-2018 Park and Open Space Plan presented by Parks Director Jacob Anderson. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a while. So this Parks and Open Space Plan has been a labor of love for myself and the Parks and Recreation Board. It's probably about 4 years in the making. Extensive time at the committee level, reviewing all the parks in Monona, looking at what we've done in the last 5 years in all of the parks, and then making recommendations for improvements. So we do have basically a finalized recommended for approval from the Parks and Recreation Board a 2014 to 2018 Parks and Open Space Plan. Big thanks to Sonia and the previous planning intern that helped with all the data that was derived from the 2010 U.S. Census. So there's a lot of good demographic information in there. And this is a planning document that we use for a capital funding request, prioritizing what parks and what facilities in the parks get improvement. And then it's an extremely important document that we need to have approved by our city council in order to apply for federal grants through the Wisconsin DNR. So currently the last one that has been approved, I think, was 2005. 2001 to 2005, I believe, was the last time we've had an updated plan. So quite a bit has changed, as you guys are well aware, since 2005. And I think it's been a long time in the planning process, but it's also been a very important document, even in its draft form, for prioritizing projects and improvements in the park system.
Sonia, did you have any?
Nothing major, just that the Plan Commission would review in general for consistency with the comprehensive plan and our long-range planning goals.
Commission members? No dog park?
Might be in there
Bob?
somewhere as
I don't see a dog park,
future
Bob.
upgrade for some park not yet decided.
Chris?
Should I just in any random order talk about?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have a few comments starting on page 10 under your objectives for updated well-maintained parks. Item number 4, you talk about taking proactive steps to ensure provisions for additional parks are included in all future developments. I wonder if we should say and/or additional funding for park improvements, because most of the time we end up with fees in lieu of, and we use it in our existing park system. So I think that's an important difference between what it says. Just a question on the bottom of that page, you talk about, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, it's a good idea, but I'm wondering why we're talking about vehicle purchases in the parks plan. Does Parks purchase vehicles, or would that be Public Works? Parks does?
Yep.
Did not know that. Good. Page 17 and 18 is really taken from our comprehensive plan. It's overall issues and opportunities. It seems odd to have it in a Parks plan.
I'm not sure how it ended up in there. I think that's how the 2005 version might have been.
I believe so.
It just seems odd to have that. I mean, some of these can pertain to parks, but it's really, this is part of the comprehensive plan. I don't know why it's in the parks plan, those 2 pages. Just a comment, unless everybody else loves it there. Page 22, we talk about Ahuska. That's ticky-tack, but it's not JV tennis there. I just think when we get down to really particularly just talk about tennis there instead of JV. And then I started making notes because a lot of this, but if you're going to publish it now, this talks about what's going to happen in 2014, and it's already 2015. So I would just recommend you update some of that. Some of the things you've done, like the entry feature to the football field, is done instead of, but I think you got a lot of little things like that to go through. One thing I added by Ahuska, you and I have talked about it, I've talked about it with a lot of people, right by the tennis courts. You're talking about the expanded parking over by the baseball fields, but right by the tennis courts, it would be simple and cheap to expand some parking there. We've got the drive aisle, we've got 1 row of parking. All we have to do is build another 18 feet of asphalt, and we double the parking there, and that park is dreadfully short of parking. So I would think that could at least be a possible goal for in the future, is to expand that parking also. Because one thing we can do is the credit union parks in our parking lot all the time. I don't know if they have a parking easement right now, but that's perfect that they don't, because I'm sure they could help fund this parking, and we could give them a license to use part of it during the day, but they could help fund that additional parking. It would cost the city virtually nothing. It's such cheap parking right now because we've got the drive aisle built. So I just think it's a great place to add it. And with the football field, the tennis courts, that area is always short of parking too. Yes, which park is this? Maywood Park. And I talk about this a lot, and I'm telling you I'm sustainable. But I don't understand why we're putting a porous asphalt path over tight-bound rock, because all that's going to happen is the water's going to go through the blacktop, porous asphalt or concrete. It's going to have to go vertically out to where it would have been anyway. So it seems like we're putting money in the wrong place. We're putting money somewhere to look good, but it's not doing good. And I'd rather spend the money doing good. So to do a permeable pavement installation properly, you'd need to dig all that base out, put an aggregate storage layer, look at your infiltration. But I would say, to what end? We've got a massive park with one little path. If that water goes out a couple feet to each side, it soaks in anyway. But to put it over tight-bound base course makes no sense whatsoever. So Again, it's just a plea. Let's use the stuff, but let's use it where it really does good. And let's spend our money where it's doing good instead of where it makes us look good. I just wanted to do, which park am I on now?
I think that carries through in a number of different areas where you're talking about the permeable paved
Absolutely.
path, and it's
No, I see.
not needed is what we're hearing.
Stonebridge Park, kudos on whatever you can do there, because I look at the city and I see on that end of the city virtually nothing for parks for all those residents. So I love the fact, I have no idea what the history is. I know there's stuff going on there, and there was a project, there wasn't, but I would just say from a planning perspective, Stonebridge Park is one of the few parks on that end of the city to serve the residents. So again, anything you can do to Stonebridge, I think, is outstanding. My last part goes back to parking again, where we're talking about down by the Dream Park, but then this also pertains more to the city center. We're always short of parking at city center, always, whenever we have events. And you and I have talked about it too. I think a nice goal would be off of Nichols there. We have that one small parking lot. There's a lot of area there. We could do a great expansion to parking there. That would be a perfect place for a permeable parking lot or something like that, so it soaks in before it gets to the lagoon. But we could double, triple the parking we have right off there and be right in the core of the city where we have all our events. So for me, a long-term goal would be to expand that parking with the parks as well as the stuff right next to the Dream Park at Healy. Thank you.
I'd encourage you to include those comments in our Winnequa Park Master Plan survey that's now available online.
Is it available right now?
On mymonona.com.
I absolutely will.
It might take you a little bit longer, but normally 5 to 10 minutes. And we appreciate all the input.
Pat's going like this, I don't want to hear about it again. Thanks.
Any other comments?
If you want to be current, Jake, you might just review some of the recommendations where you were indicating park signs have already been taken care of.
Sure.
Oh, I like that recommendation wherever you can make it, but.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we could do is change it to 2015 to 2019, but there is some expediency in May 1st is a deadline for DNR grant funding request, and in order to apply, we have to have an approved park and open space plan. So the goal is to get this thing approved. If we have to make some addendums to it, that's fine, but we need the council resolution to include in our application packet for federal funding. And there may be a project, depending on what comes out of the Winnequa Park Master Plan, that would be eligible and at least applied for a sustainable or significant grant.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ron.
The 2014 Plan Commission, see that I'm not included?
We will make that change.
So what I'm hearing, the big change is page 17, 18, just to get rid of those, and then update for work that's already been done. The other stuff that's in here, I got comments on stuff, but we're not locking this in plan in stone.
Sure.
It'll come back. So for tonight's purpose, so that we can keep this train moving, eliminate 17, 18, update for items that we've already completed, plus Mr. Humbert?
Unless I'm hearing Jake right, he wants to publish it as a 2014 plan and leave it without updating everything. I mean, either way is fine.
But let's take out page 17 and 18.
I think so. It's just
I can
reading it.
double-
It's not even a very good read with it right there in the middle. It's just like it takes you somewhere else.
I'll double check and make sure it's not a component of our core proposal that the DNR sets for
How about
requirement. and if
We can
that's-
approve it as a suggestion. Is everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, somebody want to make a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to 7, report of staff and commissioners. A, report on 2014 Community Development Annual Summary. Sonia.
So this is the report that I emailed maybe Friday and today, and then dropped off a hard copy for you. And it's really just a a documentation, record keeping, and communication report that I think is useful for documenting small accomplishments and then putting them in the context of our broader planning goals. So just the example of requiring McDonald's to remove their pylon sign. This is a goal that the Plan Commission's been working on for decades, and to just make sure that that's documented as reaching one of those goals. I think also it's useful, we're looking at the 10-year update of the comprehensive plan right now, and this is a nice way to go year by year and get into a little bit more detail about what we've done, and also same reasoning for the strategic plan. So just a couple of highlights. We're well on our way to updating the comprehensive plan, participated in sustainability planning activities, reviewed for economic development activities such as the new redevelopment area number 9 plan, just an update on where the city's tax increment district value is. Zoning code maintenance, we updated the new floodplain and shoreland wetland zoning code, and then also made other administrative improvements like putting it on the website and updating permits that are associated with that. Zoning Board of Appeals had a review session on criteria for granting variances. As far as construction activity, 7 building permits were processed last year in 2014 compared to 9 the previous year and 7 in 2012. 218 new multifamily units will have been constructed between 2013 and 2015, now that Trista and Lake Edge are under construction and Fairway Glen was completed. And then just wrapping up the end of the report, there are construction highlights summarizing Monona Lake Edge, Trista, the proposed multi-tenant commercial building, Pumping Station 18, Gunderson Funeral Home, some new businesses, Habitat for Humanity, Legacy Martial Arts, Global Presence Ministries, a couple of businesses closed, Village Peddler and Salad Creations, Pizza Oven, Joy and Yoga, and Vogel Wood Products all expanded or relocated to accommodate growing business. And then attached to the report is just this little poster. I had extras from the comprehensive plan open house. So.
Thank you. Excellent. I appreciate this. It's a nice way to capture how we spend our time.
I loved reading it. It was an awesome summary, and I really enjoyed it. There's actually a few things I learned, like I didn't know Allstate had applied for overrule and things like that. So it was actually it was fun to read. Thank you. I don't mean just that item, I mean all of it. I like the summary of the building permits and all the things going on. We don't see it in one little document. I would think people would love to see this online if it's available.
Yes, it will be. Yep.
Any other comments? Sonia, thank you very much. Report on conditions of approval follow-up spreadsheet. We just kind of...
So I think maybe this is new for Rob, and I think Dale has seen it once on the Plan Commission, but this is a spreadsheet that we keep for when the Plan Commission approves a zoning permit, and it has conditions on it, and sometimes those follow-up on the conditions is further out on the timeline, and so keeping a spreadsheet makes sure that we're following up on everything that's required and that the Plan Commission approves on a monthly basis. So where we are here, a lot of them don't actually require things to come back. So just for example, with Lake Edge, they might have had a landscaping plan that needed to come back for Plan Commission approval, but most of those things have been completed. The only things that have to come back for Plan Commission are some signage. Trista and the water will have signage back, as well as Legacy Martial Arts. And a couple of items haven't completed their landscaping, and then the rest of the items I think are just when they are done with construction, we'll actually just go out and do an inspection and make sure that everything was done according to the approved plans. So, any questions?
No, this is great. I love it.
It's amazing.
Thank you for keeping up on this. Any questions? None? Very much appreciated. Thank you. And we move to staff report regarding status of development project proposals.
The only thing that I have is the CSM that was submitted. Public Works will review it on the 4th, which means we could review it here on the 9th. Right now, that's the only item pending for the 9th, so see if anything else comes up that is time sensitive. Otherwise, the next meeting would be February 23rd.
Is the multifamily project of Royals coming back?
Are we on to D then?
Yes.
Or- okay. That application still needs to be revised by the applicants, and discussions are continuing with staff. So they're not ready to come back to Plan Commission yet.
But they are.
They are planning on it.
Mr. Humber?
Just going back to see, if we had no other items, are you saying you would not have a meeting then on the 9th? Or you,
I think it's possible unless there's something else.
well, unless it would be for their schedule, if they're planning on starting that and they need the CSM, I'd just
Right, we
make
would-
sure we check with them when we'd have to act on it, so that city council could act on it, so they could record it if they are looking to start their project.
Yep, I'll talk with them and see when it needs to be scheduled.
All right, thanks.
Anything else? Seeing none, we move on to 8.
Move adjournment.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.